So, in reading my selections from this, I thought it appropriate that I speak from my perspective as this new generation. So, the first I'd like to offer some quotes about the importance of stories in our lives. The first is by DJ Clandanen and F.M. Connolly. In effect, stories are the closest we can come to experience. A story has a sense of being full, a sense of coming out of a personal and social history. Experience, in this view, is the stories people live. People live stories, and in the telling of them, reaffirm them, modify them, and create new ones. Stories, such as these, lived and told, educate the self and others. And a second one from C. Witherell in Noddings. Through the poignant grip of a story and metaphor, we meet ourselves and the other in our mutual quest for goodness and meaning. So hopefully the significance of these stories to a new generation is apparent. The stories these previous generation of educators tell, they explain more than the who, the what, and the where. They tell the how and the why, and place a new generation's hows and whys in perspective, in context. They have fixed them in the realms of possibility. We situate our positions, values, and responsibilities through rejection, reassessment, reapplication, and reaffirmation of narratives like these. Stories present the boundaries of known experience. They incite the urge and foster the imagination to move beyond known experience. The first I'm going to read is titled The Measure of Those Years. Remembering those early classroom years brings a blend of incisive, sometimes biting, critical assessment tempered by pride and nostalgia. In Sonia Pratt's words, those early years were pretty wild. I had one administrator say to me not long ago that he didn't understand why any of us who taught in the early 70s were still teaching. They were times of progression and regression. They were uncertain, unpredictable times. Most of all, they were changing times. Of all the perplexing social and pedagogical issues with which art educators, as well as those in all other disciplines, are wrestling today, most emerged and intensified during the 1960s and 70s. Educational equity, overcrowded classes, drugs and violence, the perpetual labor of constructing a relevant, democratic, and academically sound curriculum, the fight for understanding, representation, and respect for the visual arts as a discipline, and obtaining adequate resources, conditions, and facilities are among the most pressing of these. Today, few of those early difficulties have been resolved. Some have been ameliorated, some have festered and grown worse, some drag on unchanged. What is important and characteristic of the flower teachers is that they looked upon these difficulties as opportunities and pressed for solution throughout their careers. As Ken Wilkie said, the focus was on making change and helping others to see it. There were times to go do something, to remediate. Inadequacy and insecurity, frustration and failure, both imagined and real, were tempered for these young teachers by in terms of determination, responsibility, and accountability. As evidenced by their professional longevity, this generation maintains an audacious desire to succeed for their families who have believed in them, for their students and the parents who trusted them, and as they were driven by their times, for their own satisfaction in knowing they made a difference in the world. This second selection is from a teacher named Marie Shack, reflecting on her experiences. After September 11th, the world of our students is very different, and I do not envy their role of bringing children into the world and raising children in the future. I think it will be harder for them. I look at my own children, along with many of my students. They are a privileged group, and I fear it will be harder for them to overcome adversity. But on the whole, adolescents still amaze me with their zest, ideas, and passion for what is important to them. And after all these years, they still make me laugh, and luckily, I can still pull a few chuckles out of them. Parents are more educated. They appreciate the effort we put into helping their children prepare for college. They seek our advice and respect us as professionals. On the other hand, sometimes they are also less grateful for our time, effort, and commitment. Sometimes they see the extra things we do as just part of the job and to be expected. But we do it for the children, not for the parents. Sadly, I find more parents willing to make excuses for their children rather than to back up a teacher's concern. In the long run, the child loses, and often when they get to college and face a harsher reality, some of them are not able to cope. On the whole, it is usually not the teachers who disappoint you. You are there for them to teach and guide them. They are searching for answers about themselves and their world. When they are ungrateful, when they are less passionate about their work, when social life concerns dictate actions more than academics, when they resist opening their eyes to modern or abstract art, for example, I can accept this. I keep on going, keep on trying to edge them towards maturity and aesthetic fulfillment. The disappointment is cushioned in the fact that they are young, and someday they just might remember what you were trying to get across. Through my advanced degrees, I have more of an academic awareness, but the bulk of my intuitions were formed early in my career. I love art history, so it was always important, and I realized the student's artwork was the result of a journey and a process, so critical thinking was always important. But it always has, and still comes down, to trying to help students live more human and enriching lives, become good citizens and good people. When I see a bird flying, I think of Matisse's paper cutouts. I want to give students experiences to enhance their living. I try to get them to see that sometimes those little joys go through large troubles and times of stress. This philosophy has never really changed through teaching different levels in different towns, public or parochial schools, and through 3 decades of various art education movements. What is important in the end is the realization that students in my classroom are really learning new ideas, skills, and passions. It is reaching out to fellow faculty members, being a comrade. It is maintaining my vision of the student as my primary focus. It is supporting our program through research, community involvement, and close relationships with parents. Most importantly, I hope that the students who have passed through my classroom will lead richer, fuller, more human lives, having been touched by my presence. This is a selection from Sherry St. Pierre, titled Why I Call Myself a Saint. One incident happened this year which tickled my funny bone. In this elementary school, we must write report cards for art, music, and physical education. For one student, I wrote that when things did not go his way, he would go on strike and refuse to work. The next day, after the report cards went home, his classroom teacher came to my room and handed me a business envelope, saying it was from William's father. When I opened the envelope and saw a computer-generated letter, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end, as I thought of the possible confrontation with a parent that lay ahead. But to me, it was the funniest letter I had ever received from a parent. Apparently, there was an intense discussion between William and his father on why I was a hard teacher, why I called myself a saint, and why I called myself a doctor. I have enclosed the text of the letter below. Dear Dr. St. Pierre, I am writing to inform you of William's and my discussion of the report on his performance in art class. Thank you for bringing this problem to our attention. Please know you are not alone, and we have been talking to William about this kind of behavior. There are 3 things that William mentioned in his argument, in his defense. 1. William said you were a hard teacher. I explained that I pay taxes to have teachers challenge my kids, and that Dr. St. Pierre is doing that. I pointed out a piece of artwork that William has hanging on our wall. I told him that he probably never thought he could make such a great piece of art until his teacher got him to do it. I also added that I am impressed with what he brings home, and he should look forward to the compliments. 2. He didn't understand why you were called a doctor. I explained that people can go through college and get advanced degrees, PhD for example. I told him that when people work hard to gain the status of doctor, they deserve to be called that. It shows accomplishment. I used his aunt, who is a dentist, as an example. Her patients call her doctor, not Mrs. 3. He couldn't fathom why you called yourself a saint. By using the telephone book, I showed him a number of names that begin with saint and explained that all these people were either born with last names that begin with saint or married into the names. I hope our discussion helps out. Please feel free to contact me if William continues to pout. Again, thank you for the report. Sincerely, Terry B. Biliaro.